welcome. I'm a relative newcomer here, so I'm really honoured to be with you. Thank you very much. I'm going to do my best to build on what John Credis said last night. And I don't expect you to agree with everything I say. I'm aiming to be a stimulus for your discussions this weekend. So I'm sure we're all feeling the fallout of the referendum and its repercussions personally. It goes close to home, doesn't it? Dividing families, colleagues, neighbourhoods. It's more important than ever, therefore, for us to recognise the special role that the Church can play at this critical point in working for justice and building a social peace. How can we help our democracy work for the common good? So in the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to go back to our roots, to how our tradition can inspire and resource us. I'll tell you a bit about Together for the Common Good, about working ecumenically and across traditions. I'll talk about the common good as a practice, linking our vocation with our spirituality. I'm going to look at the mission of the Church and our special calling to build community and strengthen society. We'll explore and celebrate the different ways to foster the relationships necessary for a just and peaceful common life together. Does that sound okay? Are you with me? That's good. So, during the campaign leading up to the referendum, I don't know about you, but I got that sick feeling you get in a hall of mirrors. Proposition after proposition was put forward. Self-interests were offered to us as desirable outcomes, and then reflected back at us in multiple distorted ways. It's like a self-referential world with no air. And social media acted like echo chambers, and opinion polls exaggerated the whole process. But whether you were for Remain or Leave, the people have spoken. A whole lot of things have been exposed that have been festering under the surface for many years. Overwhelmingly, the Leave vote came from poor areas. For too long, a so-called progressive agenda has held some working class communities with traditional views in contempt. They feel patronised and insulted. They've been ridiculed, called stupid, old-fashioned, inward-looking, bigoted, disapproved of as not politically correct, ignored and abandoned. And when people from traditional proud cultures experience humiliation and powerlessness, they will eventually respond. So for democracy to work for the common good, it's necessary to understand what people's interests are and to negotiate to achieve a balance. To do this, we're going to have to get to know each other better and foster relationships between people who don't know and don't like each other. But before we judge anybody else, we should look first to ourselves. Have we, as Christians, judged those people? Have we ignored people or favoured some groups over others? Let me tell you about Anne-Marie, who I know through my friend Cathy. Anne-Marie lives with her 4 children on a rundown estate. She used to spend most of her time in her flat watching TV, only going out to collect the kids from school. She said she didn't have the confidence. In any case, there was nothing to do around where she lives. She felt the church people in her area were more interested in campaigning for global justice than in people like her right on their doorstep. This is how Anne-Marie perceived the church. Well, government efforts such as the minimum wage, living wage, tax system can help to tackle inequality and poverty statistics, but they can't fix poor relationships, isolation, lack of agency, and they can't fix the lack of meaning in people's lives. Has our notion of justice come down to handing out bits of money? The case for Remain was built on economic arguments. But many of the people who voted leave wanted something more meaningful. Faith in the City, published in 1985, said, "Poverty is not only about shortage of money, it's about relationships, about how people are treated and how they regard themselves, about powerlessness, exclusion and loss of dignity." Pope Francis is calling for a poor church, for the poor and of the poor. And now that the fragmented, unequal and divided nature of our country is laid bare, we need an examination of conscience, perhaps even of the church itself. It's a hard question, but at parish level, have we personally overlooked people like Anne-Marie? Is it worth taking a reality check? Has there been a tendency, unintentionally perhaps, to rank the needs of some over others? Ignoring the interests of other human beings in our own society is to exclude the possibility of what they have to contribute. In Pope Francis's theological tradition, sometimes called the theology of the people, poor refers to people who live with the experience of non-power. Now, this can be social, material, relational, spiritual, economic, and in other ways. He says if the Holy Spirit is set free among these people, this is how the church itself will be transformed. So we need to be clear what we mean by poor. Faith in the City highlighted relational poverty 30 years ago. Now, Philip North, Bishop of Burnley, says, and I quote, "We are hooked on an outdated temple model, thinking we are doing good by shouting at government from on high, rather than seeking locally based solutions. I am sick and tired of hearing pompous tosh about the church's prophetic voice or the church in the public square, whilst at the same time we are busy abandoning the people we purport to represent." Unquote. Our common life together is being challenged. The emphasis on rights, identity politics, extremism, self-interest, single interest groups, all amplifies mutual suspicion and fragmentation. And social media, dangerously, can actually make interaction less likely with people different from ourselves. But the potential of the church, of what the church can do to meet this challenge, I think, is vastly underestimated. Our traditions of love, hope, responsibility, human dignity, family, community, relationships, our habits of mind are sorely needed now. We know that money is not the whole answer. There is a special role for the church to strengthen civil society. We can foster that culture of encounter where people of different experience meet at all levels and in all sectors. We can build the links between local institutions and between estranged groups. Can we be the ones with the courage who are prepared to stay in the room, negotiate, keep the conversation going, keep the dialogue going, recognising the humanity in everyone, affirming the legitimacy of what each person has to say? Church buildings, parishes and people are perfectly placed to be at the heart of this solution. We can create value that doesn't necessarily involve money. I feel the concept of mercy is at the heart of all of this. Do you remember that feeling of being totally forgiven? Totally loved by God? This is what the church is meant to do, through us, to convey that feeling to everyone, not just to our favourite people. This is the kind of church that Pope Francis has been asking us to be since Evangelii Gaudium. It's the kind of outward-facing church, Archbishop Derek Warlock, my father, Bishop David Shepherd, and their Free Church colleagues built together a generation ago. They listened to all the voices. They were branded statist by the Thatcherite right. They were branded traitors by the hard left. They didn't take the easy path. They brokered relationships between mutually suspicious and hostile groups, the police, the black community, between business and unions. They stood in solidarity with communities as they found themselves caught between the militant tendency and the Conservative government. They kept channels of dialogue open. They worked with business, affirming their crucial role for the common good. Their 20-year ecumenical partnership encouraged the churches of that time, clergy and laity, to empower local leadership in communities of the left behind. They worked alongside people, not doing to, but working with people like Anne-Marie, building up their capacity. Their body language said it all. Side by side, they modelled an outward-facing church, acting in the interests of the people, not in their own institutional self-interest. It was a church in the street, in factories, in offices, in business, not only in the pews. And they were responsive to context, not obsessed by the church or by politics, but more concerned with the messiness of human life, the reality of human life. I don't believe they were socialists. I think they were radical traditionalists for whom poverty was an affront to the body politic. They resisted the seduction of political ideology on both the right and the left. They resisted being sidetracked by doctrinal differences. But they were loyal to their own traditions. There was no syncretism there. They learned from each other, realising that they each had different gifts to bring. Gifts like Catholic social teaching, the See Judge Act methodology, hospitality to the whole community, courage and negotiating skills, united in the gospel. They rolled up their sleeves and enjoyed smelling like sheep. This is what made the church relevant then, and it's what society needs now. What if it became the default way to be a Christian? This is what inspires Together for the Common Good. I'll talk a bit more later about that in a few moments. But before that, will you come with me? Let's see why relationship is at the heart of our tradition. Now, I'm sure you know this amazing 14th century icon by Rublev. It takes as its subject the mysterious moment when Abraham receives 3 visitors as he camps by the great oak at Mamre. On one level, this picture shows 3 angels seated under Abram's tree. On another, it's a window into the realm of God. It's a visual representation of what the Trinity means, the nature of God, and how every living person is called into a great creative participation with him. Reading the picture from left to right, we see the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Father looks forward, raising his hand in blessing to the Son. His gesture expresses a movement towards the Son. This is my Son, listen to him. The hand of the Son points on, around the circle, to the Spirit. We can see the movement of life coming towards us, flowing clockwise around the circle. As the Father sends the Son sends the Holy Spirit, so we're invited and called to complete the circle with our response. We respond to the movement of the Spirit, who points us to Jesus. This is the movement of our lives in response to the movement of God. There are three signs at the top of the picture: the hill, the tree, and the house. The Spirit touches us. He leads us by ways we may not be aware of up the hill of prayer. It may be steep and rocky, but the journey in God goes before us along that path. It leads to Jesus, and it leads to a tree, a great tree in the heat of the day, spreading its shade. A place where we begin to find out the possibilities of who we can be. The tree is on the way to the house of the Father, where the door is always open for the traveller, for the returning prodigal. And each of the visitors has a staff to show that they enter into our journey, our slow movement across the face of the earth. God is with us in the weariness of our human road and sits down at our ordinary tables. There's a space for us at this table. We're invited to complete the movements of God in the world by our own response. We're invited to enter into a relationship. It's being part of this relationship that makes us fully human. So as we think about democracy, justice, and peace, this is the point from which to start. From the gospel, out of Jesus' interior life. And it gives us a jolly big clue about our role as Christians in the world. It's our job to show that humanity can recover a proper view of the human person, not through the lens of money or through unfettered personal liberalism, nor through extremist political positioning, nor through a dehumanizing lens of efficiency and distributionism, but through one human person's relationship with another. The primacy of the human person in relationship with others. As Benedict says in Caritas in Veritate, and I quote, as a spiritual being, the human creature is defined through interpersonal relations. It's not by isolation that man establishes his worth, but by placing himself in relation with others and with God. Unquote. And as Pope Francis says, if we don't keep this channel open, then we're no more than an NGO. So to discern our mission, our hidden journey, if you like, requires a very deep kind of trust. A trust that where God has placed me is sufficient, not knowing where it might go. That kind of trust is what has brought me here today. 5 years ago, I had no idea what was in store. I can only describe what happened as a movement of the Spirit, pulling me into a completely new path. I was living an ordinary family life, working in graphic design and as a serial volunteer. My sons were 11 and 13. And for the first time since my conversion to Catholic Church in my mid-20s, I felt I was being called. It was my hidden journey breaking through. I found myself drawing a cross formed of the words ecumenism and social justice. And at the intersection seemed to say reconciliation. It seemed the Holy Spirit had plans, but it wasn't clear to me what to do. So for the first time in my life, I felt drawn to look at what my father and Archbishop Derek learned from each other. What was their better together philosophy really about? How could it be relevant for now? I felt out of my depth, but I prayed, just prayed my way along, and I asked for help. I could hear my dad saying, "Who are your allies?" So a steering group formed in 2012. We didn't intend to do any more than hold a conference and publish a book. But it's grown and is continuing to grow, unfolding in all sorts of unpredictable ways. Our newsletter is read now by over 1,700 people and organisations. Our website is a well-used resource. We've published our research into ecumenical social action as a handbook, along with a book of essays on the common good from different political and belief perspectives. We assist others in their efforts for the common good. We've hosted public debates and private conversations, bringing people of different traditions together. We're now developing materials to enable teachers, clergy, laity, communities and young people to engage with the common good as an idea and as a practice. We're deliberately not a membership or a campaigning organisation. We like to be low-key, a bit like a catalyst, to prompt others rather than to centralise. We have a staff of one, that's me, and an intern for a few months, but it seems we are sent the graces we need. We punch above our weight thanks to our steering group members, associates working on all our projects, our community of advisors and working partnerships across all the denominations and beyond. We're ecumenical, non-partisan, and independent of any institution or denomination. There's no place for sectarianism or factionalism here. Like David and Derek, although we disagree on some things, we think it's mutually beneficial to work together across our differences. We're open to learning from each other. We encourage common good conversations. Reconciliation was their method for building the common good. So like them, we want to encourage and equip people of goodwill to work together across their beliefs and political differences as agents of change for the common good. Especially the laity, sitting at that table in conversation with the Trinity, open to discerning their hidden journeys. Are you still with me? Before we go any further, I just want to be clear what we mean by the common good. We all think we know what it means, but definitions are contested. So the idea resonates from Aristotle to Indaba, Ubuntu, Shalom, across humanist, Jewish, Christian and many other traditions. No one has a monopoly on an idea about the common good. We draw from across all the Judeo-Christian traditions, and in particular from Catholic social teaching, or, as it's a living body of thinking and it's not perfect, you could say Catholic social learning. So the definition of the common good, as it goes, is the set of conditions in which every individual in the community can flourish. Yes, but if we stop there, then the concept sounds woolly and it can be misrepresented. I think it's how those conditions are created that is the crucial question. The common good needs to be built by us together across our differences. It starts with conversation, locally, by people talking to each other. I cannot create the common good on my own, neither can you. I can't do it just by talking with my friends. To build a common good requires people who may disagree and whose interests and circumstances are different to encounter each other in relationship. The results are surprising. It's a bit like an alchemy. It's about a balance of interests. Simply put, it's in my interests that you thrive. And although it's a principle in its own right, we are also using the common good as an overarching term to refer to all the core principles set out in Catholic social teaching, because the building of the common good depends on the application of all those principles. As we know, Catholic social teaching is about the promotion of social justice, but it's also a recipe for building a common life together. As we've tried to share it across Christian traditions, its name is often a barrier to non-Catholics. So in an ecumenical and broader context, we talk about common good thinking. And at entry level, we use the broad headings of the common good, the person, relationship, stewardship, and everyone is included, no one is left behind. And beneath these headings are the familiar principles: human dignity, dignity in work, respect for life, equality, reconciliation, subsidiarity, solidarity, participation, association, and the importance, let's not forget, of intermediate institutions. I don't have time to go into this here, but I'd really recommend you look at the Love in Action workshop that's here today and look at the Anna Rowlands videos that are on in the Just Fair. But it's important that we give weight to all the principles and resist the temptation to pick and mix based on our own particular concerns. And to keep in mind that we can only release the potential of what these principles can do if we keep that channel, our relationship with the Trinity, open. We must be clear where our centre of gravity lies. Catholic social teaching rejects ideology, both individualist and collectivist, big business and big government. Both tend to dehumanize. CST offers a constructive process of discernment, not a protest narrative. CST will only secure the credibility as widely as it should if it is clearly understood to transcend party politics. Its potential will never be realised if it, or we, who use it, are seen to be an appendage of a particular party. The old left-right orthodoxies have not succeeded in building a common life. Partisan tribal politics puts off the majority of people of goodwill. Most people want to contribute. They want to build a better world, but they don't want to be part of a politicised tribal approach. For a long time, the social justice field has been the preserve of a minority. What about everybody else? The majority have in effect been cut out and their contribution lost. How do we get those people involved?